Hello, my name is Sydney Erdman, and I am here to discuss functional behavior assessments and functional analysis. So a little bit about myself. I got my undergrad degree in psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I also received 2 certificates in culture and communities and child and adolescent studies. I'm currently working towards my master's at Ball State in applied behavior analysis. And my field experience is that I'm a behavior treatment therapist in RBT in the clinical setting with an emphasis on early childhood intervention. Some additional experience I have is that I've been in RBT since 2018. I've been in the field since 2015. I also have experience in the clinical homeschool and daycare settings, and my experience with the FBA process is implementing the functional analysis screening tool, also known as the FAST. To start, we're going to discuss when you should use an FBA. An FBA should be implemented when a client's behaviors are interfering with their learning, development, or independence. FBA should be conducted by a qualified professional. FBAs provide clinicians with information on why behavior is occurring and what function it serves the clients. FBAs identify the contingencies that are maintaining the problem behaviors, and they also provide supporting information about behaviors and guides clinicians when developing behavioral intervention plans. What are problem behaviors? Problem behaviors are behaviors that interfere with the client's daily learning, daily living skills, and independence that allows them to access certain settings and locations in their life. Problem behaviors can range from ignoring an instruction or disrupting others to severe self-injurious behaviors. Romani et al. Reported that FBAs are mandated and are considered an evidence-based practice. They also stated that many different settings utilize different behavioral assessment tools that may lead to different results. So when you compare that with the FBA, indirect assessments include ABC interviews, the FAST, questions about behavioral function, and descriptive ABC narratives. They also are compared with the experimental function and functional assessment methods, or the EFA. Romani et al. Found that FBAs correctly identified a minimum of 1 problem behavior 70% of the time, and FBAs are common use among behavior analysts and tend to be the only assessment tool that they use to determine problem behaviors. They stress that it's important for behavior analysts to know and understand different assessment tools, such as the experimental functional assessment, so that results of what functions the behavior serves aren't different from other assessments, so that their findings are consistent across the board. Alayi Rosales et al. 2018 emphasized that prevention practices should be taught to children who may engage in problematic behaviors when experiencing common environmental variables that elicit the occurrence of these behaviors. They stated that the preventative practices are also known as the Big Four, and these include individuals learning how to communicate, gaining attention, engaging in play, and coping skills. Problem behaviors should be analyzed through an FBA and in some cases a functional FA as well. The goal of this research was to determine the function of problem behaviors in order to design socially significant interventions that teach functional alternative behaviors. These interventions include utilizing the Big Four. And the researchers also stated that the Big Four supports the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which all children and all individuals with and without problem behavior have the right to learn the Big Four and should be taught the Big Four. Lastly, Samadre et al. 2020 assesses how effective general education training is with functional behavior assessments. This article is interesting because it reviews how effective the general how effective their training on FBAs for teachers are. FBAs should be a priority when addressing behaviors. FBAs are required in order to develop behavioral intervention plans. Some of the barriers that teachers face include they have the lack of an opportunity to participate in the FBA. General educators should be involved in the FBA process, and they're not. Trained and qualified professionals may not always be available to conduct an FBA for a student. Training for general educators on FBAs falls short to the legal requirements of FBAs in the school settings, such as they're required during the IEP process. And training methods should be realistic and beneficial to the natural contingencies of a classroom. So here we're going to discuss the comparison of an FBA and an FA. To start, we will talk about the FBA, which consists of 3 approaches. The first one is indirect assessment, which include interviews consisting of questionnaires or rating scales, reviewing records, behavioral interviews to obtain information from familiar people. Descriptive assessments include behavioral observations during natural contingencies. This is where the BCBA would collect ABC data and put that data onto scatter plots. And then lastly, the third approach is the functional analysis, which we will discuss next. And then after all of these approaches have been completed, or probably just the first 2, the indirect assessment and descriptive assessment, the clinician is able to develop a hypothesis of what the behavior functions. The functional analysis is where antecedents and consequences are manipulated to understand their effects on behavior. There are 4 conditions: contingent intention, contingent escape, contingent alone, and the control contingent. All of these conditions must have a specific MO for the client with a reinforcer for the maladaptive behaviors. Conditions are systematically implemented and data is recorded. Conditions are implemented several times to assess the extent of the behaviors and to ensure that they occur consistently. Next, I will discuss the steps of an FBA. The first step is to gather information from indirect and descriptive assessments. Next, the clinician is able to develop a hypothesis. After that, they will test the hypothesis by conducting an FA, and then finally, the clinician will develop an intervention plan to target problem behaviors and increase socially appropriate behaviors. In my field experience, the FBAs are conducted by our intake department during the initial assessment process when a client is being assessed for ABA therapy. My field experience utilizes the functional analysis screening tool, which I will show you what that looks like. So that it's also known as the FAST, and it's a interview style. After it's completed, the clinician will utilize this scoring summary to determine what function the behavior serves. So is it social, attention, escape, automatic sensory, or automatic pain? And in my experience, I typically do indirect assessments and direct observations in the field. In conclusion, I would like to learn more about FBAs and gain more experience conducting them. I would like to be a part of the intake process at my field experience. and to do more of a formal FBA rather than assessing during the moment within my sessions. And then the field experience for my field experience placement, how I learned about the FBA process is minimal compared to what I've learned in the coursework. Our coursework really goes deep into how to conduct FBAs and FAs and why they're important. And then questions to my peers include, did you receive formal training on how to implement an FBA or FA in your field experience placement? And does anyone work with clients in early intervention? If so, do you use a more formal way to conduct FBAs? Here are my references. Thank you.